No one in the courtroom expected what happened next. Not on a calm Thursday morning, not during a routine docket of traffic cases, and certainly not from the young man who strolled into the chamber with a smug smile and an air's confidence. Judge Frank Caprio had seen people come into his courtroom proud, angry, embarrassed, afraid, but rarely laughing, and almost never laughing at someone else's pain. Yet that's exactly what happened when the senator's son, 21-year-old Lucas Harrington, leaned back in his seat and chuckled under his breath while a disabled veteran struggled to approach the bench. The laughter was barely audible, but it sliced through the room like broken glass. Heads turned, eyebrows raised, and Judge Caprio, who had been reviewing the next file, slowly lifted his eyes and saw everything. Something shifted in the air, almost imperceptibly, but everyone felt it. Lucas Harrington had been cited for reckless driving, speed well over the posted limit, and allegedly mocking another driver while weaving across lanes. Normally, it would have been another case among dozens, but the mood in the courtroom had already become tense when the previous defendant, a retired Marine named Harold Hal Bishop, rose to walk toward the bench using a prosthetic leg that clicked softly with every step. Hal moved slowly, carefully, pausing twice to steady himself. The courtroom grew quiet out of respect, everyone except Lucas, who sat with arms crossed, leg bouncing impatiently, his phone hidden half under his jacket. And when Hal stumbled for just a moment, Lucas snorted a quiet laugh, shaking his head as if he were watching a bad comedy. A few people gasped. A woman in the back whispered, "Is he serious?" Even the clerk's hands froze above her keyboard. Judge Caprio, the man whose courtroom had long been a sanctuary of compassion, felt the ripple of discomfort spreading around him. He didn't speak right away. He didn't even look at Lucas. He simply watched the room with calm, steady awareness, sensing there was more beneath the surface. Something was off. Something deeper than a traffic violation. And the courtroom wasn't sure where this was heading. Judge Frank Caprio leaned forward slightly, the soft overhead light catching the silver threads in his hair. His eyes, warm but sharp, settled not on the veteran, nor on the citation file, but on the small, almost invisible human moments that told him everything he needed to know. He had presided over thousands of cases, watched countless people walk through his doors carrying invisible burdens. He prided himself on seeing the person before the offense. A judge, yes, but a father, a grandfather, a human being first. Today felt heavier than usual. His voice, gentle yet resonant, finally broke the silence. "Mr. Bishop," he said, "take your time, please. There's no rush here." Hal nodded gratefully, adjusting his balance as he stepped closer. But Judge Caprio's mind was already turning. He had noticed Lucas's smirk. He had noticed the entitlement in the young man's posture. He had noticed the way arrogance can sometimes fill a room like smoke. And though he never rushed to judgment, he also never ignored cruelty, especially toward someone who had already sacrificed so much. "Keep calm," he told himself. "There is always a story beneath the surface. Let the truth unfold." But before dealing with Lucas Harrington, Judge Caprio needed to handle Hal Bishop's case. The case that, unknowingly, would expose something far more emotional than a simple traffic infraction. Hal stood with a quiet dignity that only those who have endured pain without complaint possess. He was in his late 52s, weathered skin, rough hands, eyes that once probably held a youthful spark, but now carried a different light, steady, bruised, but unbroken. He explained his situation with humility. "Your Honor," he began, voice low, "I was cited for obstructing traffic. Officer said I was driving too slowly. I don't blame him. It's just that mornings are hard for me. The leg doesn't always cooperate." Judge Caprio listened, nodding carefully. Hal continued, "I served 3 tours. Lost my leg during the last one. My mobility's unpredictable. I was on my way to the VA clinic that morning, had a small infection that needed checking." He paused to swallow, eyes lowering. "It's just been one of those weeks." The courtroom listened silently, respectfully, but then Hal's voice cracked a little. "Honestly, Judge, I try to keep my head up, but sometimes it's hard. My wife passed 3 years ago, and my daughter moved across the country for work. His throat tightened. So, it's just me. Some days, the only time I talk to anyone is when I come here. Someone sniffed quietly. A man in the second row rubbed his eyes. Judge Caprio felt a familiar ache, the kind that settled deep in the chest when someone's suffering echoed too closely to stories he had heard throughout his life. He didn't interrupt. He didn't hurry him. Every word mattered. But behind Hal, Lucas shifted, rolling his eyes with exaggerated patience. That was the moment when nearly every head in the room turned toward him again. Judge Caprio finally addressed Hal formally. "Mr. Bishop," he said softly, "first, thank you for your service. And second, please know that in this courtroom, you are never an inconvenience." Hal nodded, eyes glistening. "And, regarding this citation," the judge continued, "you're telling me your prosthetic was causing difficulty that morning?" "Yes, Your Honor." "And you were driving carefully, trying not to lose control?" "Yes, sir." "Last thing I want is to put anyone in danger." Then Judge Caprio did something he rarely did this early in a case. He looked up slowly and let his eyes settle on Lucas Harrington, the senator's smirking son. "Is there something amusing about Mr. Bishop's situation?" Judge Caprio asked calmly. The room froze. Lucas stiffened. His confident, half-smile faltered. No, Your Honor," he stammered. "I was just no." Judge Caprio didn't lecture him. Not yet. But his gaze held weight. He turned back to Hal with warmth and respect. "Mr. Bishop, please have a seat for a moment. I'd like you to stay." Hal nodded and took a seat at the side. Then the judge lifted the next file. "Harrington, Lucas Harrington, please step forward." Lucas stood slowly, the ease in his stride contrasting sharply with Hal's struggle minutes earlier. As he approached, Judge Caprio noticed the faint scent of expensive cologne, the tailored jacket, the polished demeanor of someone raised with influence and expectation. But none of that mattered here. "Your Honor," Lucas said, trying to sound composed, "I'm here for a misunderstanding. Really just." Judge Caprio raised a hand slightly. "We'll get to that. But first, you should know that everything you do in this courtroom says something about your character. And I am listening." A flush rose on Lucas's neck. The tension in the room tightened, and the real story was finally beginning. Lucas Harrington stood at the bench, shoulders tense, chin slightly lifted, the posture of someone used to being in control, but suddenly aware that control was slipping. Judge Caprio folded his hands gently. "Mr. Harrington," he began, "you are charged with reckless driving. Officer's report indicates you swerved between lanes while shouting at the driver behind you." Lucas shifted. "Your Honor, I wasn't shouting at anyone. I was just driving fast. I was late. People exaggerate." Judge Caprio tapped the file lightly. "The driver behind you," he paused, "was Mr. Bishop." A stunned whisper rippled through the courtroom. Lucas blinked. That was him?" "Yes," the judge replied softly. "That was him." Lucas swallowed hard. Judge Caprio continued. "According to the report, when Mr. Bishop attempted to merge, you honked at him aggressively, yelled something out the window, and then sped ahead while he glanced at the officer's statement, laughing. A cold stillness fell across the room. Lucas exhaled sharply. "Your Honor, it was nothing like that. I wasn't laughing at him. I didn't even know he was." "A veteran?" Judge Caprio asked. "No, sir, I just..." "Disabled?" "No, sir, I didn't." "Another human being?" Lucas froze. That line landed. It didn't chastise. It revealed. Judge Caprio rarely raised his voice. He didn't need to. His questions alone carried a weight that made people face themselves. Now Lucas's privilege, once a shield, felt like a spotlight exposing every flaw. "I didn't mean anything by it," Lucas murmured. "It was just a moment." Judge Caprio studied him, then asked quietly, "Why were you laughing in my courtroom today?" Lucas's jaw tightened. "I wasn't." But everyone had seen it. Everyone had heard it. Before the judge could reply, Hal Bishop, who had been silent at the side, spoke up unexpectedly. "Your Honor, His voice was gentle, not resentful. Maybe it's not my place, but I don't want any trouble for the kid. I've dealt with worse things in life. If he laughed, he probably didn't mean harm. I'm used to it. Lucas's eyes flicked toward Hal, startled. Judge Caprio turned slowly toward the veteran. "Mr. Bishop," he said, "your kindness does you credit. But we're not just discussing a laugh. We're discussing dignity. Yours and his." Hal nodded, eyes down. Lucas's throat tightened. He seemed suddenly lost, like he had wandered into a moment far larger than his own missteps. Judge Caprio looked between the two men, then leaned back, thinking. "Mr. Harrington," he said, in a lower tone, "I'd like to understand who you are beyond this case." Lucas shifted uncomfortably. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Caprio said, "tell me about yourself. Your life. Your family. What brings you here today, not legally, but humanly?" The question disarmed Lucas completely. He hesitated, then exhaled. Lucas glanced behind him at the courtroom, at the judge, at Hal, and his bravado finally cracked. "My father," he began quietly, "is Senator Harrington. Most people here already know that." A murmur passed through the room. The Harrington name was well known. Lucas continued, "He's strict, very strict. Everything in my life is about image, performance, expectations. I'm supposed to be perfect." His shoulders fell slightly, "But I'm not." He laughed once bitterly, not arrogantly. "My whole life, I've been told how to act, what to say. But at home, I barely even exist. My dad's always on TV, always in meetings, always lecturing. My mom, she left years ago. So it's just me in this big house that doesn't feel like a home." He paused, swallowing. "I know I look confident, but most days I just feel empty. Like nothing I do matters unless it's for his approval. And I never get it. No matter what." When I laughed, he sucked in a breath. "It wasn't because I thought anything was funny. It's just this stupid habit I have when I'm uncomfortable. I don't know how to handle awkward situations, so I smirk or laugh. I always have. Makes people think I'm arrogant." His voice cracked. "But really, I'm just kind of broken." The room went still, not out of sympathy for him yet, but because his honesty felt raw, unpolished, and unexpectedly human. Hal watched him with quiet understanding. Lucas continued softly. "I wasn't laughing at Mr. Bishop's injury. I swear. I didn't even realize he was struggling until people started staring at me. And I panicked." Judge Caprio studied him carefully. "Why were you driving recklessly that morning?" Caprio asked. Lucas hesitated again. Finally, he whispered, "I was driving to see my father, to tell him I dropped out of college." A gasp echoed. Lucas continued, voice trembling. "I couldn't do it anymore. The pressure, the pretending. I'd been avoiding him for weeks, and he finally told me if I didn't show up that morning, I'd embarrass the family publicly. So, I panicked. I sped. I acted stupid." Judge Caprio nodded, absorbing every word. "And yelling at Mr. Bishop?" Lucas rubbed his face. "I thought he was just a slow driver. I didn't know why. I was angry. But not at him. At everything." The truth of it hung in the air, messy, painful, real. Then Hal Bishop shifted forward, clearing his throat. "Your Honor," he said quietly, "may I say something to the young man?" Judge Caprio nodded. Hal turned toward Lucas, his voice soft but steady. "You said your father's a senator." Lucas nodded cautiously. Hal continued, "I know your father." Lucas looked up, startled. "You do?" "Yes," Hal said. "We served on a Veterans Resource Committee together 10 years ago. I always respected him. He talked about you sometimes." He paused. "He said you were brilliant, and that he wished he had more time to be a better father." Lucas's mouth parted in shock. Hal went on. "He told me once, my son deserves more of me than I've given him." A stunned silence engulfed the courtroom. Lucas's eyes filled. You're serious? He whispered. Hal nodded. I'm sorry if you feel unseen. I know what that's like. Lucas blinked tears back, jaw tightening as he tried to keep composure. I didn't know he ever said anything like that, Lucas murmured. Hal added gently. Sometimes, the people we think don't care more than we know. They're just too wrapped up in their own battles to show it. Judge Caprio watched the interaction with deepened reflection. The air in the room changed. Arrogance had melted. Tension had softened. Two men who came in as adversaries were now connected by something unexpectedly human. Judge Caprio took a slow breath, leaning back in his chair. Moments like this, these were the moments that defined his purpose. This is why the law must have a heart, he thought. Because people carry invisible stories into this room, stories louder than their mistakes. He looked at Lucas young, flawed, hurting behind a veneer of privilege. He looked at Hal older, worn, burdened with scars that spoke of sacrifice. And he thought of his own father, his own children, the fragility of relationships, the ache of unspoken words. In his mind, he spoke silently. Justice is not about punishment. Justice is about understanding. And sometimes, understanding means seeing the wound beneath the behavior. The courtroom waited. Judge Caprio leaned forward again. It was time for the decision. Judge Caprio folded his hands and let the silence sit long enough for every person in the room to feel the gravity of what had just unfolded. Mr. Harrington, he began gently, and Mr. Bishop, please join me at the bench. Hal stood slowly, balancing on his prosthetic. Lucas stood beside him, the height difference striking one young and burdened by pressure, the other older and burdened by sacrifice. Two different worlds, somehow now touching the same moment. Judge Caprio looked at them with the expression of someone who had lived enough life to know that one harsh moment can change a man or save him. Mr. Harrington, Caprio said softly, you came into this courtroom today as a young man with a chip on your shoulder and hurt in your heart. You tried to hide it behind arrogance, behind humor, behind defiance. But the truth found its way out. Lucas lowered his head. You are not beyond redemption, the judge continued. But you are at a crossroads, and you know that. Lucas nodded quietly. Then Judge Caprio turned to Hal. Mr. Bishop, you came here today dealing with physical pain, emotional weight, and a life that hasn't been easy. You showed humility, dignity, and even compassion for someone who wronged you. Hal offered a small nod. Judge Caprio exhaled, his voice gaining warmth. This courtroom is not only a place for legal judgment, it is a place for human judgment. And what I see here today is an opportunity for both of you to walk out better than you walked in. He paused, letting the words resonate. Then he addressed Lucas directly. Here is my ruling. Lucas braced himself. On the reckless driving charge, I am suspending the fine. Gasps sounded immediately. Lucas's eyes widened. Your Honor, why? Judge Caprio raised a hand gently. Because money will not teach you what you need to learn. But something else might. Lucas stood perfectly still. You will spend the next 4 weekends volunteering at the Providence Veterans Support Center, Caprio continued. You will work with men and women like Mr. Bishop, listening to their stories, understanding their struggles, and seeing the world beyond the narrow lens of your upbringing. Lucas swallowed hard. You will not serve coffee. You will not do paperwork in the back room. You will sit with veterans. You will speak with them. You will learn from them. That is not a punishment, it is a privilege. Hal's eyes softened. Judge Caprio didn't stop. And one more thing, Mr. Harrington. Lucas lifted his head. You will write a letter to your father. Lucas froze. Caprio continued, not a letter about grades, or expectations, or politics. A letter about how you feel, who you are, and what you need from him as a son. A single tear escaped down Lucas's cheek. I can't guarantee, Caprio added gently, that he will change. Parents are imperfect. But you can change, and you can choose honesty over silence. Lucas exhaled shakily. His voice came out barely above a whisper. Your Honor, thank you. Judge Caprio nodded. I am not thanking you yet. Growth takes effort. Prove this moment meant something. Then he turned to Hal. And Mr. Bishop, Caprio said, your citation is dismissed. You are free to go without any penalties. Hal looked surprised. Your Honor, you don't have to. Yes, Caprio interrupted softly. I do. You've given enough to this country. You don't owe this court a thing. Hal's eyes glistened. Judge Caprio stood slightly straighter, addressing both men together. I want the two of you to shake hands. Lucas looked uncertain. Hal looked hesitant, but then Hal extended his hand first. Lucas took it, a gesture, humble, sincere, almost fragile. There was a small, rare applause from the back of the courtroom, quickly quieted by the clerk, but Judge Caprio didn't mind. Something healing had just happened. Something rare. Something deeply human. As Lucas and Hal stepped back, Judge Caprio rested his hands on the bench and spoke not just to them but to the entire room. In life, he said, we are all carrying battles no one sees. Some people fight wars overseas. Others fight wars inside their own homes, inside their own hearts. Every ear in the courtroom listened. The law can punish misdeeds, Caprio continued, but only compassion can heal wounds. And sometimes the hardest thing to do is to look at another person, not with judgment, but with understanding. His voice lowered to a gentle, fatherly tone. I have learned, in my many years on this bench, that when someone acts out of anger, it is often because they are hurting. And when someone acts with kindness, it is often because they know what hurt feels like. He glanced at Lucas, then at Hal. Today, we saw both truths. The courtroom was silent, held in the warmth of a lesson older than the law itself. Then Judge Caprio finished. If we treated each other with the patience we wish others had for us, this world would look very different. He gave a soft nod. Court is adjourned. The gavel struck lightly, not as a declaration of authority, but like a closing note to a story that had changed everyone who witnessed it. As people began to stand and shuffle out, Lucas turned to Hal. I'm sorry, he said quietly. For everything. For the road. For the laugh. For not understanding. Hal placed a steady hand on the young man's shoulder. You're all right, kid, he replied. Just make good on what the judge gave you. I will, Hal smiled. Good. And if you ever want to talk, I'll be at the center on most mornings. Lucas nodded, sincerity shining through him for the first time. Then Hal walked slowly toward the exit, each step echoing dignity rather than weakness. Lucas watched him, no smirk, no arrogance, just something new in his eyes. Respect. As Lucas stepped toward the door, he pulled out his phone, not to text friends, not to scroll, but to type a message, hesitantly. Dad, can we talk today? I really need to. He paused. Then he hit send. Outside the courthouse, the sky had cleared. The morning sun bathed the steps in quiet gold, as Lucas walked down them with a different posture. Not proud, not broken, but beginning. Some moments in life don't happen on grand stages. They happen in quiet courtrooms, between strangers who never expected to meet, a veteran with scars no one can see, a young man with burdens no one ever asked about, a judge who understands that justice without humanity is incomplete, and a single moment, a quiet handshake, a suspended fine, a heartfelt lesson, can change the trajectory of a life. Because in Judge Caprio's courtroom, the law may speak, but humanity always has the final word.